Well, I was drunk the day my mom got out of prison, and I went to pick her up in the rain. But before I could get to the station in the pickup truck, she got run over by a damned old train. And I'll hang around as long as you will let me. And I never minded standing in the rain. Lord, you don't have to call me darling. Darling, you never even call me. Well, I wonder why you don't call me. Why don't you ever call me by my name?
Thank you. Elijah was a wooden Indian standing by the door. He fell in love with Indian maid or an antique store. Elijah, young old boy. Well, he stood there and said he never let it show. Oh, he could never answer yes or no, no, no. Oh, Rosalite, never got a kiss. Oh, Rosalite, you don't love on him best. Is it any wonder that his face is red? Elijah, for that poor old bird. He always wore his Sunday feathers and held a Tommy Hawk. A maiden wore of beads and braids and hope someday he'd talk. Elijah, just stood there, said as lonely as can be. Oh, see his heart birds of an old pine knotted tree. Oh, Elijah, never got a kiss. Oh, Elijah, he don't know what he missed. Is it any wonder that his face is red? Elijah with that poor old wooden leg. Well, then one day a wealthy customer bought the Indian maid. The girl was so far away, but old Elijah stayed. Elijah, stood there, said he never let it show. 'Cause he could never answer yes or no, no. Oh, Elijah, never got a kiss. Oh, Elijah, he don't know what he does. Is it any wonder that his face is red? Elijah, for that poor old wooden I left Oklahoma, driving in a Pontiac, just about to lose my mind. I was going to Arizona, maybe on to California, where the people all live so fine. My baby said I was crazy, my mama called me lazy. I was gonna show them all this time. living on Tulsa time, living on Tulsa time. Gonna set my watch back to it, 'cause you know I've been through it, living on Tulsa time.
Could be holding you tonight. Could quit doing wrong, start doing right. You don't care about what I think. I think I'll just stay here and drink. Hey, putting you down don't square no deal. At least you know the way I feel. Take all the money in the bank. Think I'd just stay here and drink. Listen close and you can hear that loud jukebox playing in my ear. Ain't a woman gonna change the way I think. I think I'd just stay here and drink. Hurting me now don't mean a thing. Since love ain't here, don't feel no pain. My mind ain't nothing but a total blank. I think I'd just stay here and drink. Yeah. We're gone. Love is where you find it
When you find no love at home, and there's nothing
cold without you. bottle is almost empty. The clock just now struck 10. Darling, I had to call you to our favorite place again.
We know it's wrong for us to meet, but the fire's gone out at home, and there's nothing cold as ashes after the fire is gone. Love is where you find it when you find no love at home, and there's nothing cold as ashes after the fire is gone. Your lips are warm and tender, your arms hold me just right. Sweet words of love you remember that the one at home forgot.
Each time we say's the last time, but we keep hanging on.
And there's nothing cold as ashes after the fire is gone. Love is where you find it when you find no love at home, and there's nothing cold as ashes after the fire is
heaven, West Virginia,
Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River.
life is oldest, older than the trees,
Younger than the mountains,
growing like a breeze. Country roads take me home to the place I belong.
West Virginia.
Mountain mama, take me home. Country roads,
If I
All my memories,
should stay,
they gather round her.
a miner's lady, stranger to blue water. So I'll go,
Dark and dusty,
yet I know
painted on the sky. Misty taste of moonshine, teardrops in my eyes.
country roads take me home to the place I belong.
West Virginia,
Mountain mama, take me home. Country roads, on the road again, like a band of gypsies we go down the highway. We're the best of friends,
insisted that the world keep turning our way. Our way.
country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama,
Oh, take me home, country roads. Oh, I hope life treats you kind, and I hope you have all you dreamed of.
I wish you joy and happiness. But above all this, I wish you love.
and I will always love you right. Will always
Take me
love you.
Country roads, take me home. Country I just can't wait to get home. Take me home. My family's always making music with my friends. Country, I can't wait to get home. Take me
Please join me in prayer. Gracious Lord, you gladdened the wedding feast at Canaan with the gift of new wine. You wept at the tomb of Lazarus. You are with us in all things, our joys and our sorrows, and everything in between. We thank you for your presence with us today. And we pray that you will grant us comfort in this time. Amen. Every day comes. It's hard to believe that we are here, but here we are just the same. because every day comes. I sat down in my recliner at home with my laptop on my knees to try and collect my thoughts for today, to try and put some order to them. As I'm sure it is the same for all of you, there are so many thoughts swirling around in our heads, but it's hard to grasp them and make sense of them. My wife Robin and I bought our place in Willow Valley well over 30 years ago. Our youngest child was 3 years old, and now she is the mother of 5 children, and her youngest is 3 years old. So much has passed, and so much has taken place, and Bryan was always there, our neighbor across the road. One of the constants that made Willow Valley, and our community, and our home, our home. And now here we are today because every day comes. 20 years ago this Christmas, my dad spent the last of his 69 Christmas Eves at Bryan and Joni's house. Roughly 2 weeks later, he was gone because every day comes. This is just one of the thoughts, one of the memories that swirled around in my head, but all of them spoke to this. Life is precious, life is fragile, and life is something to be cherished. Today we remember with fondness and sorrow Bryan's precious, fragile life. Bryan accomplished a lot of things in his time on earth. Between the days when he ran carefree and barefoot over the hills while his dad toiled to find oil, to his last days in Lethbridge. A lot of mountains were moved, and a lot of commendable things were accomplished, but in the end, what matters most is who he loved and who loved him. I believe it's the same for all of us. The things we do are important, but who we do them for matters so much more. We have all been gifted our lives by God, the author of life, who gave his life for us. We who are gathered here are thankful for the gift of Bryan's life. And as we remember him and as we miss him, may we be reminded that life is a precious gift to be cherished. Thank you for being here today. This time I'd like to invite Joni to do the eulogy.
Beautiful, thank you. Holy, thank you for being here. Today we celebrate a life well lived. Today we celebrate a kind and humble man. Bryan was born in Pincher Creek, June 1st, 1940, the third child to Manly and Yvonne Robertson. He was predeceased by brother lost in infancy. The family lived on a small farm in Willow Valley, 6 kilometers west of Highway 22. Manly worked on the giant oil rig for years. Bryan and his sister rode a disagreeable old mare to the one-room school, North Fork. Pat Moskaluk, a neighbor and a classmate from that time, wrote to me of a couple of the shenanigans the kids got up to. The kids would bury potatoes in a pile of straw and light the straw on fire to cook the potatoes. The potatoes were always charred halfway through, but what was left was delicious, apparently. Also, she tells of August 1945 when they climbed the big hill behind her house because Bryan, well, they were all sure that they could hear the bomb drop on Nagasaki. Maybe that started his love affair with war stories. Bryan's mother spent a great deal of time with the nuns in Pincher Creek. She wanted Bryan to participate in the Catholic church services as an altar boy. He didn't want to participate at all. And one morning when it was time to don his red cassock, he refused and ran away. His dad gave chase, but Bryan ducked under the rail. so his dad climbed the fence to continue the chase. Bryan ducked back under, and his dad again climbed the fence. This went back and forth until his father finally threw his hands up in the air and said that he didn't have to take part in the services, but Bryan, that smart little tyke, stayed out in the yard until they returned in case his father had been overruled. After the well site closed, the family lived in Lundbrook, Bellevue, and Barrens. Bryan's summer jobs included farming, road work in Waterton, and one summer they lied about his age, and he and his dad went logging in BC. He was raised to work diligently and conscientiously. The fall of 1959 took Bryan to Calgary, registering at SAIT for the very first petroleum technology course offered. Following his graduation, he started a job with Energy Resource Conservation Board, making friends, lifelong friends that are still in touch with him to this day. In September of 1962, Bryan married his love, Virginia June Holman. Their son Warren was born in Stettler in 1963, daughter Jan in Edmonton in 1965. Soon the young family bought a house in Calgary and settled into the city. Bryan took a position with Elf Oil, the French national oil company, as their Arctic operations manager, at a time when the frantic search for energy was absolutely unprecedented in the north. There were new and exciting challenges for him, and for the young family, there was still time for camping, fishing, and rodeo. Both father and son participated in rodeo. There's a picture over there of Bryan riding a bull at the Caroline Rodeo. The first time my mother saw that, she said, "Bryan, is that you? When did this take place?" And with a straight face, he said, "Oh, Barb, about 15 minutes before the ambulance arrived." The Robertson family moved back to Willow Valley in 1977. It was time to get out of the city. For a while, Bryan commuted to Elf Oil, and then in 1981, he bought Narwhal Arctic Services. Narwhal managed the airport, the hotel, supported the town of Resolute Bay, and handled logistics for the mining and the drilling. They were truly pioneers in the northern frontier, building ice roads and landing strips. On one such build, Bryan froze his feet. When the storm lifted, he was medevaced out and into Churchill Hospital, Manitoba. After 10 days, the doctor came in and said to him, "Today, we're going to peel your toes. If they're pink, you get to keep them, and if they're black, they have to come off." Pink was the color of the day, but they were sensitive forever after. A tragedy changed Bryan's life in 1983 when he lost his wife in a car accident. Lost as a result of the same accident was his good friend Terry Weber. A time of great sadness. Bryan went back to the Arctic. As time passed, he consulted in ventures in Russia, Greenland, and Finland. His company, Amarillo Holdings, took part in projects offshore in Labrador, Newfoundland, and Northern Europe. Another subsidiary, Champion Oilfield Rentals, offered rented or leased heavy equipment in order to complement the support of the Arctic frontier operations. His business went from receipts in a shoebox to sharing the load with his numbers man and dear friend, Ian Harris. My first trip to the farm was in July of 1984. Who could possibly have had any idea that 37 years later we would still be sitting together, finding joy in the journey and grateful for each day. In 1986, Bryan started ranching, hiring his good friend Peter Husick to take care of things while he traveled back and forth to the Arctic, to the East Coast, or to the city. Following the sale of the Arctic operation in 91, Bryan settled into the ranching community. He participated on the North Fork Livestock Board as well as Rocky Mountain Forest Range Association. He registered the water rights for both of those. He worked earnestly to improve the integrity of his herd. By this time, Ralph Simpson was on board, but over the years we had many amazing crews, neighbors helping neighbors as well. This freed us up to spend, eventually we started shipping cattle to the cow camp in Vulcan. This freed us up to spend a couple of weeks in Arizona with some good friends. The cattle would winter and calve out at Bruce Farms and come back to the valley when the grass was ready. The first year of calving was a brutal, nasty spring for Gord Hogan. The second year, Ralph Simpson was over there, and the barn burnt down. But in time, we found our rhythm. Also during this time, the family expanded to welcome 2 lovely and brilliant granddaughters and 2 lovely and brilliant nieces. Bryan always had time for young people, happy to teach and share their knowledge, happy to share new experiences with them. Bryan dabbled in the ostrich business for a brief time between cow herds, interesting birds, interesting marketing concept, and those big chickens were a source of true frustration. About 2003, Bryan had the opportunity to buy some standing dead logs. They were beautiful, dry, straight logs, perfect for a log cabin. Visualized originally as a 10 by 10 with a dirt floor, but that's not what he did. It was a stunning masterpiece, a beautiful home. Rob Nichols contributed his expertise frequently. Bryan's son Warren did an excellent job of scribing, and truly there was a huge contributing labor force. A roofing crew, Janny's flooring crew, mason work, the barnwood harvesters, the firewood stackers, and the one who kept the beer cold in the cooler. Not one to let grass grow beneath his feet or an opportunity to slip by him, Bryan got involved in residential property development in his old stomping grounds of Bellevue. On completion, the land market wavered, but he always carried a spark of hope. That cowboy had few hobbies. He worked hard all the time. He read voraciously until his sight was compromised. He enjoyed true stories, the Hudson Bay fur trade, the stories of the Courrier du Bois, war history from every facet. And he reread Larry McMurtry's book, Lonesome Dove, until the pages had to be stacked in order. He also watched the series with Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall until he could recite the dialogue, like, Dietz weren't one to give up a garment on account of a little wear, or better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Or my favorite, the older the violin, the sweeter the music. Music brought Bryan great pleasure. We used to dance in the kitchen until the wee hours of the morning with his pig shit and gunpowder. On our first drive south to Arizona, Bryan brought his favorite Christmas gift with us. It was 4 decades of Merle Haggard. Now, I like Merle Haggard, don't get me wrong, but we literally listened to 18 hours of Merle Haggard, and sometimes the same song 4 or 5 times in a row. Finally, I caught his hand as he reached for the replay button and said, I love you to pieces, but if you rewind this one more time, I'm going to pull the car over and stomp on that CD. In the early 90s, Bryan and Ralph were treating a cow up at the old corrals, and Bryan slipped on a rail and jabbed himself in the arm with a needle. He wasn't really concerned about it. When they got in for lunch, he called the vet. But the next day he wasn't using his arm, so I took him into the clinic. They called his name, and he got up to go in, and I followed him. He turned around and he said to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going in there with you because you're not going to tell the doctor everything, and you're not going to tell me everything that the doctor said. So you want to make a scene in front of this, you fill your boots, cowboy." He says, "Well, don't talk." "You bet." So we get in there, and the young resident, it was one of those rural rotations, came in and said to Bryan, "What can I do for you? How can I help you?" And Bryan said, "Well, I poked myself with a needle." And the doctor said, "Like a small needle?" And Bryan said, "Yeah, it was a small needle." And I went, "Oh, for heaven's sakes." It was an 8 gauge with burr on the end and a live virus and it had just been in the ass end of a cow. And the guy jumped up and left the room. And Bryan says, "I thought you weren't going to talk." "Oh, sorry, honey." In 1998, Bryan was afflicted with rheumatoid arthritis, a brutal, debilitating, and progressive disease. He never complained. He took part in studies and trials, trying to find an answer to help other people. He was in demand for those studies, being male and the severity of his case. He had thoracic surgery, both knees done, both feet done, and after 5 weeks of intravenous treatment at home, he had his finger amputated, his favorite finger. He disliked putting anybody out for any reason. He never complained about his ailments, never bemoaned his state. He kept his humor, a little sass, enough flirt for the staff, to enjoy his visits and the doctors to roll their eyes. He worked hard after his stroke to do the recovery. He worked hard after his lengthy hospital stay in 2019. He is described as brave and courageous in dealing with these adversities, a gentleman, always extending kindness and respect. Every cowboy has to take his last ride. Today we are remembering the one who rode high in his saddle, whose heart was honest and true, who followed each trail with honor and saw every promise through. I love you, cowboy. Right on.
We'll now listen to a piano selection, The Homecoming by Marin Graham. I hope I said your name right, Marin, is that right? I'm going to read a poem that Bryan's daughter Jan wanted to read, but wasn't sure that. Well, she would just ask me if I would do it instead, and some of the words were too big, I guess. No, just kidding. I'm sure God has a ranch in heaven, a place for cowboys to call home, with dusty trails and deep passes where cows and horses freely roam. I picture you up on a ledge, gazing at the, I guess you should have read it, sorry. I picture you up on a ledge, gazing at the draws below, leaning forward with your 30X Stetson hat pulled way down low. I can about hear the leather creaking when your gelding switches feet, your spurs softly jingle in the wind, your ropes tied on and coiled neat. There's a contentment on your face. You're happy, but I can't pretend. Though I'm glad you've made God's journey that I can truly comprehend. In my earthly ways, I question the reason God took you away. I guess the timing was exactly right to enter heaven on that day. The only comfort I have found that puts my grief to rest is that God only takes the top hands because his crew's the very best. We will cry and we will sure miss you, and all the things that might have been, but God needed one more cowboy, and he felt you'd fit right in. So he sent down all his ranch hands, an extra horse stood at their side. Then he softly whispered to you, "Saddle up, my friend, let's ride."
I know your life on earth was troubled, and only you could know the pain. You weren't afraid to face the devil. You were no stranger gathered round your grave to grieve. Wish I could see the angels' faces when they hear your sweet voice sing. So go rest high I'm going to have a tribute now written by Levi
and Logan Sakella. They're not here? These glasses are terrible. I can see what, anyway. Sometimes in life, you find a special friend, someone who changes your life just by being a part of it. Someone who makes you laugh until you can't stop. Someone who makes you believe if you work hard and give it your all, you can do just about anything. In the summer of 2009, a Willow Valley rancher took a chance and hired us, a couple of local farm boys, as rock pickers when we were 7 and 9 years old. Some would see it as child labor, but to us it was cold hard cash. Perhaps an Xbox console or a dirt bike could be within our reach. Who would have known from that summer on, Mr. Robertson would become a mentor and one of our very best friends. It wasn't long and all formalities were gone. He was just Bryan, and he branded us as his giggling coyotes. He was the brains of the work crew, with age and wisdom, and we were his workforce. Daily were the lessons learned. Some days work was harder than others, but every day there was fun and laughter. Summer after summer, we'd be back for the next 10 years, and still today, if we could lend a hand. We'd like to share a few of our favorite memories and lessons learned. From the beginning, we were told Bryan's patience was short, only being as long as a hummingbird's, I don't think they know how to spell beak. Maybe it's not appropriate, but as a hummingbird's dink. Yes, not very long. Perseverance, even with Bryan's disabilities, he always pushed on. He didn't let much stand in his way. If he needed assistance, we were there, or he would guide us through until the job was done. As we watched him, we came to understand the saying, where there is a will, there is a way. And a shot of ether always helps. Assumptions? You should never assume your neighbor will look after his portion of the fence when you're walking by, tightening the wire, and put in an extra stable where needed. More importantly, you should never assume that a plate of freshly baked cookies is for you. They just might be Joni's homemade dog treats. We'll always be thankful Bryan sampled Shy's cookies first. Be prepared. Always keep your gas tank full, a hammer with wire and fence cutters near, as no 2 days on a ranch are ever the same. All hands on deck ready for action, except when one of those hands is needed for a quick 3-finger comb over when you need to look your cowboy best. Carry enough change in your pocket for an ice cream cone. Respect is something given but also earned in friendship, as well as respecting surroundings and receiving in bounty. Like, respect your quad enough to go around the mud hole, because when you get stuck going straight through and we can't pull you out, it's a long walk home for the work crew. Or what about that trespasser who doesn't respect the landowner's signs? Sit back, shut up, and hold on, because Bryan's going to drive home a lesson, and you know there's going to be trouble when he says, "Here, hold my beer." But our greatest lessons learned had nothing to do with work, but with time spent. You don't have to be related by blood to be considered family. You welcomed us, and you and Joni will forever be a part of ours. Thank you for all of the memories, the love and kindness. Ride on, cowboy. Forever your giggling coyotes, Levi and Logan. And now we're going to have a tribute by Dina Semenuk.
I'm Dina, Uncle Bryan's goddaughter. I am very grateful and very honored to have the opportunity to give a tribute of love to Uncle Bryan, who gave so much love to all of us. On behalf of my sister, Tammy, and my brother, Kyle, we'd like to say a few words about Uncle Bryan. I've known Uncle Bryan since the day I was born. Tammy, Kyle, and I loved to go see and spend time with him, mostly on weekends. It seemed like as soon as the snow was gone, we went up to the Gap every weekend, and it was camping time. Growing up and doing these weekend trips was fun, but it also really taught me what life is supposed to look like. Work hard, play harder. His friendship meant a lot to our parents, Peter and Isla. It's for sure one of the most longest-lasting friendships I've ever seen. For over 50 years, in their time together, they did a lot of fun and crazy things. And as kids and adults, we got to hear all the laughter, stories, and see all the good times that they had. My dad and Uncle Bryan did many things together. At one point, they were even home renovators and decided to put a hole in the roof to install the potbelly stove in the ranch house. To this day, it's still there. I was there that day. Now, most people would make measurements as to where to cut the hole for the vent for that stove. No, not this home reno crew. Uncle Bryan and Dad were on the roof. There was 2 guys inside the house. Dad and Uncle Bryan would stomp on the floor and say, "Does that sound close inside?" And the crew inside would say, "Maybe a little to your left." And then they'd stomp again, "Little to your right." This went on for a few minutes. And then it was, "Okay, yeah, that should do it." So Uncle Bryan on the roof fired up the chainsaw, said a few words I can't repeat, and just cut a hole in the roof. Luckily, it was in the right place. When we were kids, he used to make time for each of us. He would pick forget-me-nots with Tammy. Kyle and him enjoyed many good memories at the farm when Kyle was helping at the ranch, but I think for sure Kyle's 18th birthday in Vegas topped it all. And my favorite was going on the Gap rides with Uncle Bryan. He was generous with his love and shared it in his own unique ways. He did special things, like when he came back from his Calgary trips, he'd sometimes bring a big bag of Longview beef jerky, and when he came to deliver it, it always came with a story or two. He'd also bring us back the polar bear stickers from up north, and we just thought that was so cool. As adults, when we popped in for a visit, he always had a beer or one of his delicious Caesars for us while we visited. Years ago, when I was visiting with him about our acreage and how stupid expensive it was to buy a spruce tree, he said, "Well, why don't you come here and grab some little trees from the back 40? So I went there with my minivan, grabbed some pails, a shovel, a few road pops, and we hit the back 40. He watched and visited as I dug up my little trees that he pointed up for me to dig up. And even though if only a few of those trees survived from that day, it was probably one of the best visits that we've had. He was a mentor, probably to many people. I know for sure he was for Kyle and I. I admired him for everything he accomplished and what he did to get there. He was a special part of our family because he was family. He had one of the funniest senses of humors, and the sound of his laughter was something to relish. In my opinion, he had some pretty crazy taste buds. The man loved raw rhubarb and salt. I tried it once because he told me he couldn't tell me. He said, "You can't tell me it tastes gross if you don't try it." I just didn't understand how a person could eat it. But he loved it so much, it was fun bringing him his summer treat when my rhubarb was ready to eat. Uncle Bryan, You're not here physically with us, but I want you to know that our memories will live, our memories and love will carry on forever, and you will never be forgotten.
Thank you, Dina. We'll have a slideshow now.
One, two, 3, 4. On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends. And I can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. Going places that I've never been. Seeing things that I may never see again. And I can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. Like a band of gypsies, we go down the highway. We're the best of friends, insisting that the world keep turning our way. And our way is on the road again. I just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends. And I can't wait to get on the road again.
It's time to say goodbye to yesterday. scene. And as the credits roll, a sad song starts to play. And this is where the cowboy rides away. And my heart is sinking like the setting sun, setting on the things I wish I'd done. Oh, the last goodbye's the hardest one to say. This is where the cowboy rides away. Oh, the last goodbye's the hardest one to say. This is where the cowboy rides away.
When I got the news today, I didn't know what to say, so I just hung up the phone. I took a walk to clear my head, and this is where the walk-in led. Can't believe you're really gone. Don't feel like going home, so I'm gonna sit right here on the edge of this pier and watch the sunset disappear, and drink a beer. Funny how the good ones go too soon, but the good Lord knows the reasons why, I guess. Sometimes a greater plan is kinda hard to understand. Right now it don't make sense. I can't make it all make sense, so I'm gonna sit right here on the edge of this pier and watch the sunset disappear, and drink a beer. So long, my friend, until we meet again. I'll remember you and all the times that we used to sit right here on the edge of this pier and watch the sunset disappear, and drink a beer, drink a beer, drink a beer.
One, two, three, four.
I'd like to close by reading Psalm 139. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the furthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my innermost parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast the sum of them. I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to the end. And I am still with you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It would be so much nicer if we could be with more people who knew Bryan as a friend. But thanks for being here. And I want to encourage you to remember to uphold and support each other in the days to come, and to especially remember Joni, Warren, and Jan in your thoughts and prayers. May the God of comfort and hope be with you now and always. Amen.
Tell me, what does it look like in heaven? Is it peaceful? Is it free like they say? Does the sun shine bright forever? Have your fears and your pain gone away? 'Cause here on earth it feels like everything good is missing since you left. And here on earth everything's different. There's an emptiness. Oh, I hope you're dancing in the sky. I hope you're singing in the angels' choir. And I hope the angels know what they have. I'll bet it's so nice up in heaven since you arrived. So tell me, what do you do up in heaven? All your days feel